empowered people make informed decisions that lead to living a life without regret. This is Sarah Kaki and Shauna Woods from Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and this is the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. Welcome to the Happily Ever After Divorce Podcast. This is Sarah Kaki with Atlanta Divorce Law Group, and I'm joined by our very own managing partner, Shauna Woods. Shauna, today, let's bring some love and care and awareness to our clients who are really having a hard time with divorce. And today's episode, we're talking about the signs that shows that you're allowing your divorce take over your life. Your divorce is becoming your full-time job, and it's basically running the show, whether you're consciously or unconsciously aware of it. And that's the reason for this podcast, is to bring awareness to it, because a lot of times this is an unconscious thing. You know, when we are on a path of growth in our life, or we're on a path to accomplish something in our lives, it is very likely that the perfect excuse or reason will show up to stop us from seeing something through that could have massive positive impact in our lives. And divorce is one of those things. Your marriage is one of those things that when it shows up in conflict in your life, it is the perfect excuse, reason, justification to stop all else in your life that is good or is forward moving to take care of this. But there is a point when you are losing grip of everything else, and you're losing grip of your goals and the things you want to achieve because of this conflict. And because divorce does feel so heavy, and it does feel like, wow, that's a fire in your home you got to go turn out. A lot of your friends and family will never tell you, hey, put this on pause for a second, or your goal, your career goal, or your goal with your children, or some personal thing that you're seeking for bettering yourself should not be put on the back burner to this. A lot of people will, if they hear a friend in pain over their marriage or in pain over a divorce, they'll listen to it and they'll fully empathize with it and never kind of challenge you and say, are you obsessing over this too much? Are you letting go of other things that actually are more important? Because what friend is going to tell you that something's more important than what's going on in your divorce or in your marriage?
Right. And it's really hard as the friend to do that and hold that space for them, because they've probably not had a friend go through the divorce, or perhaps they have in a different way. And I fully respect that most people who go through a divorce, this was never what they wanted. This was never what they expected. And it is all consuming, especially in the beginning. But you're right. If you're going to grow through that, you really have to learn how to move through the divorce process and back into a regular, normal routine.
And so for today's episode, I want whoever's listening to this, who's going through divorce or is having a hard time with it, listen to us as if we're that friend in your life that is going to challenge you with love, with nothing but love and nothing but wanting you to come out of this not having lost more than you have to. And bring some awareness that you may not, this might be subconscious programming going on, that you're doing taking these measurements to just obsess over your divorce, and you're losing grip of other things. So Shauna and I have come up with some signs that would give you a data point that, hey, I may be losing grip of other parts of my life because of my divorce. So Shauna, what is one of the signs you came up with?
Stalking your spouse or your soon-to-be ex-spouse, either in person or on social media. It is really unhealthy for you to completely obsess about whatever it is they're doing. First of all, what they're putting on social media, and we all know this, is a presentation of what they want others to see what their life is, not the reality of their life.
Right.
Secondly, there is no sense in post-separation trying to figure out what your spouse is up to, because those things very rarely matter. And if they do, your attorney's going to put a private investigator on your spouse to get the information that we need. You and or your friends stalking your soon-to-be ex-spouse is obsessive behavior.
And it's, again, one of those situations where you can easily reel some good friends in to co-participate with you, because doesn't take a lot of creative thinking in your mind to convince yourself this is good activity, because you're thinking, oh, I can be the private investigator of this. I can help my attorney out. I can get more evidence. And it's very natural. This is completely no judgment zone. It's very natural to obsess over your case to a point where you start giving yourself a mini JD degree, a mini law degree, and a mini private investigator degree, and think that what can I do to find the smoking gun in my case? And you go obsessing over that on social media, going through his or her phone, circling around his work or her work, or going around where he or she may live. And it actually can lead to quasi-criminal behavior.
And I want to refer people back to a podcast that we did earlier on equitable versus equal division, because a lot of times when people are telling me that they're stalking their spouse or they're following their spouse, it's to quote unquote, just what you said, gather evidence. I have to challenge that a bit, because what is that quote evidence going to do for you?
Right.
Realistically, probably not a lot for your case. That's the reality.
And I'm going to say this probably with most of the signs we're going to discuss here, which is there is what you want to accomplish in your case from a legal perspective, and then there's what you want to accomplish for yourself from a personal perspective. You may have a win somewhere in your legal case, but you have to look at what cost. And it's not just a financial cost, but 5 years from now, have you lost a friendship? Have you lost the potential of another relationship? Have you lost the potential of advancement in your professional career? Or have you lost touch of what's going on with your children because this is all you dedicated yourself to? And now, great, maybe you get 10% more of the equity of the home, or great, you get a few more months of alimony, or don't have to pay a few more months of alimony, but at what cost?
And not just to other people in your life, but to yourself. How much of yourself are you willing to give into this stalking type of behavior that it's not going to reap things that are good for your soul? Let's figure that out.
Right. And it's a slippery slope, that one.
It is.
Because we've all been guilty of scrolling through Facebook too much, or Instagram, or, finding something that we find interesting and going through crazy rabbit holes on it. I mean, I can't watch a movie that I get obsessed with without wanting to go on a deep dive, obsessive, like all the background checks on the movie. And, so right. I can completely see the slippery slope of starting from an innocent place of wanting to gain understanding. And I think that's the common theme here, is that a lot of this stuff happens because somewhere you don't understand what's going on in your marriage, and you don't understand why you're here at this divorce phase. Going back to what you said, Shauna, with a lot of people don't necessarily want this. They never want a divorce. And when we have trouble understanding, why am I here? Why is this divorce happening? And you're trying to gain understanding, it can take you down some dark rabbit holes. All right. Next one I had is sort of the same thing. It's reading too much into communication, obsessing over every piece of communication, going through the last exchanges you guys had verbally over and over in your head, going crazy on email exchanges, text message exchanges, anticipating the future exchange that hasn't even happened yet, anticipating everything they are going to say, and really not living in the present, constantly thinking about the past communication and anticipating future communication.
And I do think it makes everyone a little crazy, because we all know, and most of the time when they're obsessing over communication, it's written text form, email form, maybe, another type of messenger. The tone, everything changes when we're in person. So all that stuff that you're reading into it may not even be what they're trying to communicate to you or to someone else.
Right. What was the next one you had?
Feeling the need to tell complete strangers about your divorce or how awful your spouse is.
Oversharing.
And it does come up in situations where people want their surrounding community to know how bad they were treated, right? They feel so aggrieved that they just must tell everyone they see, be on the lookout for my spouse. They are a horrible person, right? Now, if you're talking about somebody who is a physically abusive person, it may be necessary to get police involved. It is not necessary to, every time you walk into a venue, say, be on the lookout for my spouse. They're bad.
Yeah.
Right. And you do see these things going through divorce cases.
Well, I think it goes back to seeking understanding. When you are going through a divorce and you're not sure why this is happening, and you need something inside of you does not feel that it has received validation of being understood, because you never got the chance to understand what's going on in this, why this divorce is happening. And you never got the chance to feel like the other side understood you, your spouse understood you. So you're seeking it outside of yourself. But if you were able to do therapy, which we always talk about, and get therapy to help you validate you validate you validate why you're here, and you validate the fact that you don't need to be understood by a person who no longer wanted to be in partnership with you, right? And did not show up for you anymore. You don't need strangers to validate you and understand you. You need to understand yourself and validate you. And then I think we can overcome this. It is a struggle that is on that same theme of struggling to understand and struggling to be understood. Next one I had is just hard time sleeping. You know, a lot of our clients that are struggling with getting divorced. I mean, we have a lot of clients that are just like done. You know, this has been a long time coming, but those who are, whether they're in shock or whether they, you know, have been fighting for the marriage for so hard and are not ready to let go, and the other party is, they lose a lot of sleep, and that impacts their health, that impacts their self-care, that impacts their judgment. And it becomes a vicious cycle. Once you get off that sleep train, I mean, the insomnia, it's like more and more insomnia perpetuates more insomnia.
Absolutely. And sleep, as you pointed out, is one of the core things that we need in order to simply function in life. And that brain, I call it the divorce brain.
Yeah.
And you got all your emotions going all the time and you can't turn them off. Hitting something as key as therapy. And also, there's nothing wrong if, for instance, your doctor recommends maybe a low dose of an antidepressant or another type of mental health pharmaceutical to help you through this time period. There's no shame in that, because we all need help time to time. And you want to be able to function for your family that remains, for your children. You want to be able to function for you. Right. And that's so important. Even if you say, well, everything else is horrible, you matter.
Yeah. And without you, you can't accomplish anything. Okay. What's the next one you had?
I have the inability to let the small things go. And typically when I have a divorce client where there's a long history, I'll say, give me a chronology, you know. What you're not wanting to focus on is 20 years ago when you wanted to go to Hawaii and they wanted to go to Dubai, right? The small things need to be let go.
That's a really good one. And I definitely see that one where we're still obsessing over things that no amount of attorney's fees is going to take care of. Nobody's going to be able to do anything about it, but you're still not over it. That requires therapy.
That does require therapy. And it requires someone who is either trained or really, really good friend who's going to let you know that's a small thing.
Right.
Because when you're going through it, you don't know which ones are the small things.
And I think that if you find yourself in a situation where you're obsessing over the small things, take a step back. And what I think you're seeking is, again, understanding a pattern. Because instead of looking at the forest, you're looking at the trees. So you're probably still obsessing over it because it might have been the moment where you had like an aha of, wow, this is a small thing, but I've uncovered a pattern. And that's why you're still mentioning it and thinking about it. So you probably are still battling with that pattern. And if you're wanting to express it or you wanting to resolve it, focus more on what has been our pattern versus the specific instances that you can't get over the small details over. Shauna, last one I had is over consuming information that relates to your divorce or relating everything back to your divorce. So this is when you've stopped reading anything that could be something other than your divorce. You stopped reading like maybe a book series that you were really enjoying because now all you can do is pick up books on divorce. You stopped watching your favorite shows or watching any movie that doesn't give you, satisfaction of obsessing. Instead, you're just on Google all the time, about doing different searches on divorcing and stuff like that. Or maybe you're just obsessing over our podcast too much. That could even be a problem, although we love the audience. But truly, this should not be the only thing you consume, including our podcast, right?
I absolutely agree. And I'm going to tell a little story about an opposing party one time who I don't even know how they dug up this information, but back in, I want to say it was like 2005, I got a pro bono award for some guardian ad litem work that I had done. And this opposing party found that, and I literally have no idea where it's at. It's not on my resume or in a Vitae or anything like that. And I was a little bit taken back, but also I was like, that poor soul. Why on earth is that what you're obsessing about? My career or the awards that I've won or any part of that? That has nothing to do with your case. It was the opposing
over your resume.
Over my resume. And I encourage you not to do that. Right? Obviously, you're going to pick your attorney and that's the person that you want to have trust with. But if you're going to that level of digging into opposing parties, opposing counsel, right, you are becoming obsessive to the point it's going to take over your life and it could destroy things that it shouldn't even be touching.
Because there is no limit to the amount of content you could absorb on divorces.
Oh,
whether it's YouTube, Google, TV shows. I mean, obsessing over celebrity divorces, relating it back to your divorce. I mean, there is no limit. And this, I don't think anybody that's going through a hard time where their mindset is vulnerable is susceptible to this. So I think the moment you say, oh, this won't be me, I don't have to worry about myself, be aware.
And I do think that if you do find yourself doing any of these things, obsessing, stalking in a way, obsessing over the communication, any of these things, put a time limit on it, right? Say, okay, I am going to consume this for 20 minutes a day or 30 minutes a day, or maybe even not that much, but you put that time limit on it and you need to stick to your own boundaries.
So the bottom line is, don't make your divorce your full-time job. Find an advocate that you can trust and that you can park the problem of your divorce in their garage and then leave the car there. That's my metaphor. Imagine, if you can want to compartmentalize this, our client hires us, what I tell them is, this is where you're going to store this problem and we're going to take good care of it. And whenever we have appointments, we have meetings, we deal with it together. Outside of that, go live your life. Because we are here to get you through the divorce, but the biggest part of our job is to set you up for your future. And if you lose you throughout this divorce process, no amount of assets, alimony we get you is going to put that back together. It's an inside job. Thank you, Shauna.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Happily Ever After Divorce podcast. If you'd like to learn more, go to atlantadivorcelawgroup.com/resources.